Alright, welcome back to Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars. I'm here with a fabulous guest, my friend for almost 20 years, if you can believe it. David Cruiche, David Shea, what do you go by?
I go by whatever you call me. David is fine. Uh, Glad to be here. Definitely happy to, like you said, relive and kind of recount some things that we really got to experience.
Tell me your brief history of wrestling fandom. Where were you back then? How you're dealing with it now?
Well, let's see. I would say my fandom, as you say, began fifth grade, 2004, maybe. I want to say. I wasn't even big into wrestling at the time. I remember just even as a kid, just kind of surfing through the channels. You seeing it as a kid. Something like that looks so cool and so like interesting. So I didn't know too much about certain wrestlers other than like the regular ones. You had The Rock, Hulk Hogan, The Undertaker. Just guys like that the basic people knew. But from then on, it was from when I met you, we definitely I would say partnered up together. I would say on our fandom, and my knowledge of wrestling increased a lot. My my interest of it just increased. The want to do it, participate in it, learn about it, and on every side increased. So really, it's I would say even as an early age, as we discussed off of here, one of my favorite wrestlers was Randy Orton. Definitely, he had that charisma, that look to it, that's something,
That it factor.
that it factor, exactly. I know some people will know what I'm talking about. Fast forward a little bit, and we have like something like TNA that opens up later down the line, which is a different style with a six-sided ring, which we never saw before. So that really expanded your mind and your horizon as far as what type of wrestling there is out there. Then you learn other things like New Japan, Ring of Honor that we knew before, like little indie stuff like that and whatnot. So it always interested me, just behind the whole background of it. It really is just like between the whole science and people want to say it's fake or whatnot, but that's the word I hate. Fake is make believe. It's fictional, right? I think the best way to describe wrestling is scripted, but everything they do there is 100% real.
Yeah, they're putting their bodies on the line.
Oh my,
every night.
worse than more other sports you can say, like maybe I say other than hockey because you're getting beat up like every single second, but football, you're not doing much. You're just standing around for half the game. Wrestling, you have to make sure you're good with your opponents, and it's really a two-man game.
It's like a partnership.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's like you have to be with your partner, and you have to have that certain trust in that partner.
That's the key. Yeah, trust.
The topic we're going over today, which is when I first toyed around the idea, hey, doing a podcast, if there was a topic, rivalry, feud, etc., like what would you be interested in talking about? And you chose the Rey Mysterio, Randy Orton, Kurt Angle later down the line,
Right.
in particular. Why is that?
Now, that feud to me, especially as a younger person growing up, and at this point, I think I had been watching wrestling maybe like a year or two or something like that, but just consistently. But you had someone like Randy Orton who going into the feud, he's a guy I love to watch in the ring. I respected to a certain amount, this and that, whatever. Obviously, Rey Mysterio is a great fan favorites. A different type of style that you don't really see too much over here in WWE and in the U.S. as a whole. And then you had, like you said later on, Kurt Angle, who was the reigning world champion. Who, I mean, in his own right, he had a year of just turning it around from the year prior with Shawn Michaels coming to Raw, all that. He really just took it by storm. So the way that storyline all came about, and I'll focus more on Rey Mysterio and Randy Orton, from Rey being the underdog as they make it out to be in the Royal Rumble, and he deserved every little bit of it. Like, he busted his butt.
Did you expect Rey Mysterio to win the Royal Rumble at that time?
Absolutely not. I'll be honest, absolutely not. No. And he came in what, number 1?
Number 2.
Number 2, right? Yeah. Was it Triple H number 1?
Yeah.
No. I mean, listen, from the outside looking in, it seemed like a cool idea, right? It seemed like, okay, it could happen. And he was, like I said, he wasn't just like taking it easy. He was putting in work that whole match. Like, it was like an hour or something, right? Past an hour? Hour 10 or something?
Like an hour and 2 minutes.
Something like that, yeah. He, like, his performance in the Royal Rumble by itself, it was undoubtedly deservedly so that he deserved to win.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had Orton. I think he came in 30.
Yeah, he came in 30.
So Orton came in the last entry. You have that cocky young smug. You have a guy who's always feeling himself no matter if he wins or loses. And it was just a matter of like what would actually go down. Orton had that it factor, but sometimes there's curveballs that happen in the business that you just can't fight it. You can't fight what the fans want. You can't fight how it's supposed to go. It's certain things in life are supposed to go a certain way and run a certain way. And I think this was kind of one of those things that everything kind of had to fall into place, fell into place.
Worked out the way it was supposed to.
Exactly. And again, he deserved what the opportunity, the title, the shot, and everything. I think he should have gotten a better overall run.
If we go to the SmackDown after the Royal Rumble and you have Rey Mysterio coming out, he's doing the Eddie tribute thing.
Yeah.
Now, at this time, did you think, this is cool that he's making a tribute to Eddie Guerrero, his fallen friend? Or did you think it was kind of patronizing, charity case-ish, like he's just getting in this position because his friend passed?
Well, I can give you two. I can give you the version I had back then, and I can give you the version I see now.
Yeah, give us the one back then and see if it changed.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're very similar still to this day. I would think I have more understanding now, but back then, I think what he was doing was great, especially because it was still very fresh. Everything was still, not even for him, for everybody, was still, was still grieving in their ways, and obviously they say the show must go on and this and that, but he really. What he was doing with Eddie, for Eddie, some can say like, yeah, they'll call it a charity case, but again, like, he didn't get there overnight. He didn't get there, by doing cheating,
Mm-hmm.
or like taking the easier routes. He really busted his ass, from the very beginning, from different promotions for a long time, different countries, mind you, and he. Like I said before, it kind of just fell into place. These little things were supposed to happen for him, and I think it helped. I don't want to say it's a charity case. I think it kind of helped, because if you look at wrestling as a whole, sometimes there's been worse things. There's been more fresher things that has been talked about, has been thrown into storylines that made it better, honestly. Just because of the realness of it. For better or for worse, I think back then, my opinion, especially when, Orton is go ahead and really, he comes out, he talks about Eddie and how Rey doesn't deserve this, and, he says a lot of, says Eddie's in hell, this and that, and that was, again, because it was so fresh.
Yeah, the Eddie ain't in heaven, he's down there in hell, and just kind of watching it, I felt like my 12-year-old, like, almost innocence kind of like cracking down. Like, you saw a different side of the world and the side of Randy Orton, and not like it didn't make me like hate Randy per se. I was just more or less uncomfortable with the situation, because it was still, like you said, it was still so fresh. It was still it cut a little bit too deep for my liking.
I can't say that I didn't hate him. I definitely I definitely hated him for. Well, he did his job, I guess you can say. I definitely hated him as a wrestler, definitely hated him as a character, whatever, as a person, whatever, whatever I knew as a person of him back then, as a fan would. I hated of him. I didn't care for him. Yeah, again, like you said, I think there's certain lines that there may or may not be be able to cross, and I think he may have crossed it a little bit, but at the same time, back then I thought maybe he crossed it a little bit now. I think he was just kind of doing his job, maybe even too well, if you want to call it that. Um, but he really went above and beyond with that promo and everything that really cemented, I think, what they were trying to do as well.
I'm not sure if you heard Orton's take before. This
Mm.
is a interview from the Kurt Angle show
Okay.
when he was on Kurt Angle's podcast. I just want to get your reaction to it and see if like anything like changed in that perception wise.
Sure.
When being asked about if he was comfortable with saying those words, he said 100% not comfortable with it. Ray assured me that it's something that Eddie would have wanted. Even still, Ray and myself went to Vicky, and Vicky gave us her blessing. She said the same thing. Eddie would have wanted to help you guys in this matter. If he could have used his death in some way to help the business, as morbid as that sounds, he would have wanted us to do it, especially with Ray being involved. So, although it was a horrible tragedy and we all lost a friend, it was something that helped me along the way in my career. As the bad guy talking about that's heat. It worked and it helped the angle between me and Ray. But looking back on it, it will always be something that's there's a lot of things I've done in my career that made me uncomfortable. I think we can all agree on that. But that in particular was something that I put on the top of the list.
Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of the reaction I would expect. Even when you look at the promo and you look at how when he was saying it, you can tell through his body language a little bit that he wasn't 100% behind. The real him wasn't 100% behind the words. But like he said, it worked. It worked to a great amount. I think it did the job very well. I think, like I said, it helps cement future things going forward. It helps set up the future match down the line, this and that, the opportunity with Ray and Orton, this and that. So, which led to other things as well. So, it was a big domino to fall,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it had to have fallen.
They could have worded it differently to get that heat. He could have said something along the effect of, Eddie Guerrero, he was a legend, but you, Rey Mysterio, are not going to be that legend of Eddie Guerrero. This is not Ray embodying the soul of Eddie Guerrero versus Randy Orton, but Ray trying to prove himself that he is his own individual in person, that he's more than just Eddie Guerrero's friend. I thought that would have been a lot better just to kind of differentiate, like, hey, Ray's his own person and he's going to win the world championship his way. And I thought that could have done a little bit well without pushing the envelope a little bit too far.
I agree. You can see, or at least you can tell sometimes, that maybe WWE wasn't 100%. If you look at certain bookings and certain opponent matchups and kind of like what you said, certain little things like that, the promos, because that would, like you said, build his character a little more, kind of make him kind of separate himself a little more. But I think because of Eddie and his legacy and how strong they were really taking the momentum of what was happening and kind of using that to boost him all the way up. So, I mean, on one hand, I see what you're saying and I agree. But on the other hand, I can't totally fault them for kind of using the fire that's right there in front of them. It's almost like having a basketball and having a lane to the hoop. You're going to take the layup all day.
Yeah, you're not just going to go for the three-pointer.
Right.
If you see a layup, you're going to take the layup.
It's an easy shot. It's going to work, right? So, yeah, I think they could have maybe said it a different way. But I think the way that they wanted to broadcast it, very straightforward, very direct, very maybe even call it foreshadowing as far as changing his character a little bit, because you down the years you see the Viper, he was already at that point kind of getting over not getting over the legend killer stuff, but him himself, I think he was getting ready to move on to the next thing.
You want to know whose idea that was for Orton to say Eddie ain't in heaven, Eddie's in hell?
What's that?
From WrestlingInc.com, they did an interview with Court Bauer, who is a writer during the time on the SmackDown brand, and they asked him whose idea was it, and he said Vince McMahon, definitely. No one was on board, but Vince kept pushing for it, and he kept doing it. Mm-hmm. Week after week, he kind of gave it a whole holy water coding thing of being kosher, mixing religious expressions and butchering it all. Basically, he made it legit in his mind by saying that Eddie was up there right now laughing because he loved things like that. He'd be totally on board with stuff like this. How can you say that? It's just his way of saying something that made it feel less... It was one of those things that I disagreed on, and everybody in the room disagreed on. We all wished we could have done more, but we weren't. We all volleyed it. You sure? We could keep it more subtle? No, he wouldn't even go for more subtle. So there was nothing we could do, and it was terrible. It was a terrible feeling, and it was one of the first flags that went up to let me know I need to consider other options. But I would hold on a few more years.
Wow.
And he goes on to say that it felt like at least 3 or 4 months, but it only lasted about a couple weeks, only like probably a month of like the Eddie stuff.
Yeah, right.
Your coworker that you work with, that you write promos for, that you write segments for or produce segments for, and he passes, and the wound is still fresh, and you're trying to incorporate that kind of story and broadcast that story to millions of people. It's just an insane thing to think about.
It's unsettling. You know, it puts people in a tough position.
A very awkward position.
Yeah.
Especially with Orton still being new into his career. We
Young,
didn't,
still his mid-20s.
Yeah,
right?
He's 25 years old, and he has to say about this like guy he worked with, the
admired, good friends with,
like locker room leader.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think I hate to just chalk it up to this, but it's just one of those things that, for better or for worse, is the nature of the business. I think there's only very few like drastic lines that can be crossed. Like, say for example, I don't know, if he maybe had passed in a different manner, maybe if he wasn't like the it man on SmackDown at the time, potentially capturing the world title, down the line. Maybe he was if he was hurt or something sitting out, he wasn't on TV. You just never know. Maybe it would be a different way of going about it. But no, it's at the end of the day, it's like you said before, it's not surprising that with how Vince was so on board. I get it, but see, on one hand, I can understand it, because I feel like Eddie and Vince, obviously I don't know them personally. Eddie and Vince, they definitely had a relationship, boss and employee relationship. Went back for years. Vince is the type of maniac to absolutely I can see him just smiling every day, like waking up and saying that line outside, out loud. But that being said, he's also a smart maniac. He knows how to make money. He knows how to.
He did create an empire.
Yeah.
Of that. It's just one of those things where it's like
a
you
moral
have this
ground almost.
I think it's more uncomfortable, not just because Eddie passed. It was more of, here's the only guy in the room who wants to do this, and it just happens to be the person in charge who thinks this is a good idea.
Yeah.
It definitely put a very big exclamation point on it, wherein, as before, I wasn't really, not to say I wasn't invested in Rey Mysterio, but SmackDown was kind of bare bones at that time, in that Batista's gone, Christian's gone, Eddie's gone, JBL's kind of winding down.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't really have any premier faces besides Rey Mysterio, and Bobby Lashley was kind of coming up, but he was still very new.
He was still very raw, very green. Yeah.
SmackDown couldn't gain traction at this time because you had Kurt Angle move to Raw from SmackDown in the beginning of the year, and he's gonna be leaving for ECW in the next couple of months.
Yeah.
Which is what's gonna hinder Rey's title reign, in my opinion. But after all that happens, Randy Orton beats Rey Mysterio in a tag match later that night, and Rey gets all flustered, and he says, all right, I'm going to put my #1 contendership on the line against Randy Orton.
Yeah.
And the next week, they try to walk it back, and Randy's saying, he's like, I don't actually believe Eddie's in hell. That was all a ploy just to get Rey Mysterio to put his #1 contendership on the line. Wrestling kind of like takes back when they realize, whoa, this was a little bit too far.
Yeah.
And they kind of walk it back like that. Man, if you just said it, then it kind of own it. I know it's kind of like a weird thing because I don't condone this line at all.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
The line itself and like, the interactions itself, obviously I wasn't okay with. But once it's done, you say it and everything like that, you go from there. And what you have to do is, me personally, I feel like, especially as a very hot storyline and as a very like intense, with everything that happened with Eddie, you really just have to own it. Like, you really have to just, I don't want to say take it a step further, but just just stand behind it. Just ride it out. Not repeat it, but say it in a different manner, just to keep it a little more fresh in the fans' minds. Like, hey, for better or for worse, which is why I'm saying own it. Just take it to the bank.
Mhm.
Just take the bag to the bank at that point.
Right.
Just go full throttle with it and just do it. That's the best way that I think it should go about. Creatives at points, they know what they're doing. I think the build up wasn't bad. I think it was pretty good. The only thing I can say is I wish they would have made, like you said, Rey a little more individually strong. But I see what they were doing, and I'm like, you know what? There's at that point, like, if you take out the whole Eddie situation, and this is a very arguable thing that one can say, Rey would not be in that position, not for him, but he just didn't have the star buildup to really get him to that next level at that time.
Did you think he would get that eventually? Let's say Eddie does not pass. Do you think Rey gets that top spot eventually, or do you think he would just kind of stay upper on the card kind of guy?
It's kind of tough to say because the dynamic of WWE back then was a little different than how it is now, if you think about it. You have guys like Rey, Daniel Bryan, Kofi Kingston, just to name a few, who 10 years ago or even around that time would not have had a shot or would not have even been looked at. Do I think he would have made it at some point? Yes, I do. I think he had enough charisma, he had enough in-ring ability, and I think at some point down the line he would have had a shot.
I agree with you saying that Rey Mysterio would have gotten there eventually, but who knows how many years down the line, and his history with injuries too. Who knows, like, if that time would have ever happened as well as it did. Rey Mysterio, Randy Orton, No Way Out.
Ooh.
The match happens. Again, this is a new kind of Rey Mysterio in that he's carrying a big money match.
He has a load of the company really on his shoulders.
And Rey Mysterio was still trying to find himself main event-wise.
You gotta fight to stay there.
Not just fight to stay there, just kind of like find yourself and who you are as a main eventer. Are you still going to be the same thing? Because once you win the title, then what happens?
Yeah.
Like, are you still going to be the guy who just holds the title, or are you going to be the guy who makes the title and be the guy who
bring the prestige to the title?
Who are the great champions? And then you can name like 5 off the bat. Or are you just going to be like one of those names who unfortunately don't get remembered as much?
Yeah. Call them a paper champion almost.
During this match at No Way Out, it was still kind of seeing how the cards fall. And Randy Orton rolls up Rey Mysterio, grabs the ropes,
of course,
for the 3. And Randy wins, and he grabs a mic, and he's like, I'm going to WrestleMania. And then he just stares at Rey. Where are you going? Like, dagger right in the heart as a fan. Like, oh, yeah, Rey's not going to WrestleMania.
I thought it was over. How can they really incorporate him back into this match? Like, that was it. Like, unless they did some sort of, like, feeling bad type of thing, which kind of was like that. They brought him back into it.
Rey Mysterio and Vicky's waiting. Chavo's waiting. And they're saying, you did your best. You did your best. And you see Rey just walking down the hallway, and you see, like, the random cruiserweights just kind of staring him down. Because, again, what do you say to a guy who lost arguably the biggest match of his life to that point?
After winning the biggest match of his career.
You know what I would have wanted? Add that extra fuel to make it sting even more?
What's that?
If Rey Mysterio would just take his mask off.
I had a feeling you were going to say that, yeah.
And then drop it.
Yeah.
And then just walk away. Just kind of giving that stamp where they're like, here's a guy who lost all his confidence and saying, hey, I'm doing this for my boy. I want to feel for this guy. I don't want to see him as like a charity case guy. And we're going to get into this, how the charity case narrative kind of like starts in the next SmackDown. But that's what I think would just like kind of like push this angle to the next level, like emotionally.
I was going to say something similar. I knew you were going to say the mask, but my thing would have been just to take off like maybe like one of the EG armbands, stuff like that. Almost to throw it out and like, I disappointed you type of thing. You throw it out on the floor. At this point, like, I think it's obvious to most people that, Eddie's going to be with Rey in the storyline. Because it still was so fresh and everything like that, that I think that it was going to be headed in that direction with Eddie, being name dropped here, and you had Rey come out with a lowrider before, this and that down the line. Like you said, toss out or maybe give like a armband or something to them to kind of show like, hey, because it is going to be the two of them together, if you want to call it that. I disappointed myself and him and you guys, to kind of really get that whole scene together. But either ways, whether they did your way or my way, I think a little step further, it would have been a little more descriptive to really in the whole emotion of what they were trying to portray, so.
And now we get the SmackDown, and Rey Mysterio comes out. He's really sad.
Yeah.
Can't blame him. And he's just apologizing, saying he's let everybody down. And Teddy Long comes out,
yeah.
and he says, look, it's like, I can't take out Randy Orton.
What a guy. What a guy here.
Because he won the match, even though it was by cheating.
Yeah.
But what he can do is add to the match, and you see Ray's eyes, those
Light
giant,
up.
like
Contact
contact
eyes,
lenses.
yeah.
Yeah. Teddy Long announces it's going to be World Heavyweight Champion Kurt Angle defending against Randy Orton and Rey Mysterio. And Rey Mysterio is celebrating, and Michael Cole says he has a new lease on life. And this is where the stigma of being the charity case kind of comes in.
Yeah.
He lost, and then
They felt bad.
we feel a little bit bad because you lost by cheating.
Yeah.
Imagine this scenario, and we're going to fantasy book. Usually I hate fantasy booking, but this is like, they did my man Rey Mysterio kind of dirty.
Very much so.
Have a rematch, Randy Orton versus Rey Mysterio. If Rey Mysterio wins, he gets added into the match.
Okay.
During the match, ref is down. Randy Orton goes for a chair, brings in the chair. Rey kicks Orton in the gut, grabs the chair. Referee's coming too.
Okay.
Rey slams the chair on the ground,
I see.
tosses it to Randy. Rey plays dead. Ref sees Orton with the chair, rings the bell.
I like that.
Rey
like
does
that.
the Eddie Guerrero trick, and again, Rey cheated just like Eddie to get into the match, like how Orton cheated to get into the match.
Right.
Not only is he paying tribute to his friend, he is also saying, "Hey,
Using his ways.
if you want to cheat to get in this match, just so you
Yeah.
know, I could get just as bad just to get what I want in that WrestleMania." And you could use that relationship with Eddie, and I would just cut it off there saying, Eddie got me this far, but now I have to make it the rest of it my way.
I think WWE almost made it like a point that every single, and I don't know for the top of my head, I had to look back at the promos, but you can almost at least see or hear like every single promo where he's thanking somebody for, like the fans or God or, whoever for helping Rey get to this point is always, thank you, Eddie, right? Almost to say like, I get you want to thank God and everything like that, but like I feel like by thanking Eddie every single time, you're not, like you said, you're not separating yourself as you, like you're not separating yourself from Rey Mysterio, the wrestler, and Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero, like the tag team almost, like the name itself. So I feel like that kind of hurt the build up a little bit, the kind of like the after he won the title, because everything was for Eddie. I did this for you, this and that, like, yeah, you can say that was the motivation to really, that brought him all the way over the hump, but counterproductive, you can say that, it wasn't really him. Eddie was almost using Mysterio vicariously to get that world title for himself almost, like it's in a weird way,
Like portrayed, massaged into the skull.
a little bit.
Ray did it, but he didn't actually do it.
Yeah, like I feel like the last time he won was really his first time.
Yeah.
He won later down the line, he won the WWE title, which is, with a little asterisk next to it, but
He still became president.
listen, man, so it still counts.
Yeah.
So, it's a tough situation to really deal with as a whole, even from creative.
The story kind of shifts a little bit. It becomes a little bit less about Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, and Orton, and now what happens when you add Kurt Angle in the mix,
Yeah.
Trying to add Kurt Angle to this story that's already personal, it almost kind of makes him, even though he's world champion, kind of seem like a third wheel into this program, even though they're trying their best, where it's like he's like, I just want to beat the best.
Right.
I want to be that wrestling machine.
Exactly.
Everyone's going to tap out. And during the build-up to this match, Kurt Angle makes both of them tap out. He makes Rey tap out the night before WrestleMania. And then Orton tries to interfere because Orton was playing that, oh, hey, I think I deserve like, a night off.
Right.
And then
Don't we all?
Ray and Kurt are both challenging Orton in the match, and then they get into each other's faces. They're
Yep.
like, "What do you mean you're gonna challenge?" And
Yeah.
that classic like heel trying to like
Yep.
put them together, and then Orton just tries to interfere
Classic.
after the match, and then Kurt Angle makes him tap.
That's what it happens.
And they made Kurt Angle look like an absolute monster, and which is crazy because the dude is about like 6 foot, if
Plus,
that.
maybe, yeah.
And he is just like tearing these guys' ankles up, and it's hard to
And
build.
throwing them around the ring too.
And it's hard to build. Like, it's hard enough already to build Rey Mysterio as a credible contender
Yeah.
when you have him not only, like you said, carry the flag of his fallen friend, but now he's in a position where he's never been before, and people are already doubting him.
Yeah.
And now he's just tapping out to Angle.
It's almost like this was like foreshadowing a little bit, like Ray's run, like the build up to there.
There was a lack of confidence in the build in Rey Mysterio, and when the ending is him winning in the end.
You know what it felt like to me, like the WrestleMania match itself. Because going to your point, in a way, they almost made Angle like an afterthought. The WrestleMania match itself was like, first of all, it was short. Like, for such a great build-up and, like, 3 great wrestlers, you had 2 different storylines coming to one, with Angle obviously coming to this one. It largely disappointed me because...
It only lasted...
So, 7, 9 minutes, something like that?
Yeah, 9 minutes.
Even if you look at the ending, it felt like it was, like, so... Like, 1, 2, 3. Like, it was, like, boom, like, drop kick. Like, once Angle was out the ring, boom, he was out, like, he had nothing else to do with the rest of the match.
The ending of the match is Angle goes for the Angle Slam of Mysterio. Mysterio arm drags him out of the ring. And then Orton tries to come in. Rey Mysterio hits the
drop kick.
Drop kick.
He's on the ropes.
He's on the ropes. He hits the 619. And
that's basically it.
And he wins. And Angle, like, barely...
At the end.
Like, tries to get in.
Like, no breakup, no run-in. It was very...
I have a
clean.
A quote from Randy Orton, I think. Let's see. I remember not having a lot of time for the match. It might have started at 20 or 18 minutes, but by the time, like every WrestleMania, by the time we got to our match, I think we lost at least half of that. The actual in-ring couldn't have been more than 10 minutes, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. That's crazy, because those wrestlers, they go through a lot of matches, so, like, I can understand that the Reigns don't remember certain things and all those matches over the years, but, like, for you to remember that specific one and the amount, too, like, listen, that shows volume.
My spot of the match, let's see if you could guess what it is.
I mean, your favorite one? I don't know.
So there's a spot in the match where Ray tries to go for that. You know when he would do the in between the legs bulldog and just kind of like bounce out?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so he was doing that to Orton, but Orton countered to a German position. Angle comes up behind Orton, and they do the double, and Rey Mysterio just goes flying.
Yeah, he's only like what?
Like he just goes for it. Like Angle went for distance with this one. The parts that kind of confused me was, I'm not sure if you remember, but Randy Orton's trying to get in with a chair because apparently like this triple threat disqualifications happen.
Right.
So the ref is dealing with Orton, and Kurt Angle has Rey Mysterio in the ankle lock, and Rey starts tapping.
Yes.
And then Angle gets up and he's like to Orton, "What are you doing?" Then he puts Orton in the ankle lock, and then Ray just like he comes in, he's like hugging the referee to not see, and then Orton starts tapping.
I remember, yeah.
This match is already short as it is because they have to fit a lot of stuff in there.
That's what I'm saying. And it was like,
and it's just like been like a car crash, and I'm just like, man, Angle just beat both these guys. I'm like, I don't see how this makes either of them look good.
I didn't feel like anybody looked super strong in that match. Like Angle's run beforehand, like he looked like you said, a monster. Orton beforehand, he had that smuggy it factor that you knew, that he could possibly win any single match he's in.
Yeah, he could just sneak his way in there
and just do something.
Some might say like a viper,
right? And then you had Mysterio, who obviously had the momentum of just everybody. Really, I mean, like this, he was just on a unstoppable yet deservedly great run. So you had 3 guys coming into a match with a good storyline. Mind you, it was it's a little iffy, but good storyline nonetheless. Good money making storyline. And then you come out with 9 minutes of just like couple moves here and there. It's almost like no one had a chance to sell. No one had a chance to be heard because everything was very 1-2, 1-2.
It's kind of like watching this personal story, and
It was a letdown, is what that was.
yeah,
You know,
and being like the actual.
It was a
Imagine
letdown.
if Avengers Endgame, we didn't get we just watched all that build up from Infinity War, and we only got to 2/3 of Endgame, and that whole climax at the end doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And it just lasted about a minute and 30 seconds.
like the celebration after Ray won
Mhm.
was better than the match itself. You know, like they gave more time and effort to the celebration, fireworks, confetti, whatever you want to call it, to him with the world title than they put in the actual match itself, which is like you spent all this time and money and everything like that to try to, put out something so great, and not even great, it was real too,
Mhm.
like it was real. Like don't get me wrong, these are professionals and whatnot, but something real like that, like you're gonna showcase that in some way.
When Ray wins the title, I forgot if I watched this match with you or you left at that point, because I remember ordering the pay-per-view. I'm just not sure.
I think I watched it with you.
Yeah,
I think I was here with you.
because I
wanna say.
remember us being happy that Ray won, but kind of deflated
Like
that.
saying like that's it.
Yeah, it
Like,
was just
that's it?
kind of like,
So quick.
yeah,
You blinked and it was like
it's like you have all this build up for like years of seeing like this is Rey Mysterio's journey.
That's the
He's
thing,
gonna
too.
do it, and then it just wrapped up so quickly.
and I feel like he's put on better matches on TV building up to the pay-per-view, and you just did not see it.
Oh yeah, he also slipped when he was trying to do the 619, the angle. Do you remember that?
I
He was
think
like,
I think I remember
it was like around the post.
yeah,
And then he
yeah.
slipped, and then he just like
That
got
didn't
back up, and they were in Chicago too, and Chicago were letting him have it. They were just booing Rey
Chicago
Mysterio.
people are ruthless in every
Yeah.
way, shape, and form.
Yeah,
There's something else.
and that's the thing, and that's quite a kickoff to the reign of Rey Mysterio, where he just kind of,
Coasted. I don't even want to say the word coasted. Like just floated, really.
this was a couple weeks into his reign, and JBL was like, I'm challenging Rey Mysterio because he has that machismo, and he used that word machismo because you know how JBL was. He was the uber American.
Yeah, just
Like,
yeah.
and Teddy
Old
Long,
school American, yeah.
yeah, and Teddy Long's like, all right, Kurt Angle is gonna challenge Rey Mysterio for the heavyweight championship on SmackDown, and Kurt Angle also is advancing in King of the Ring after they wrote Randy Orton off.
Yeah.
Which kind of raised flags. But Rey Mysterio has this interview, and I think it was like Crystal Marshall or somebody. People are doubting Rey Mysterio and think you're going to lose the championship tonight.
I remember this.
What do you say? Are you going to lose the championship tonight? Which is a weird thing to ask the champion. I was like, hey, are you going to lose your title? And then Rey Mysterio's response, it's like, no, I'm not going to lose my title. Take a stand that it's like, yeah, it's my title. I'm going to retain.
Defend yourself,
And then Rey
yeah.
Mysterio, you know what his response was?
What?
I wish I knew, Crystal. I wish I knew that I was going to walk out world heavyweight champion.
Speaks volumes, I feel like. He's speaking from the heart.
Have a little bit more confidence in yourself. You're the champion. You're the guy.
I think what started happening was the steam, the Eddie steam, that was that goal, the pinnacle. Now, like you said before, now what? What kind of champion are you going to be? Like, all right, so let's see who's going to step up to you, this and that. It's like you can really, and I think we all knew that Eddie's steam was only going to run so far. I didn't think that steam was going to run out a lot sooner than we thought. Some of the guys that, took on Mysterio, or like you said, even just judging by like that interview and the response, you can tell that he just there's no confidence there. There's no like security there. There's no he really does not know. Like every match, like he wasn't the same Mysterio. He didn't have that fire.
Believe it or not, it gets even worse.
Oh boy.
So the next week, that match ends with Kurt Angle, with Mark Henry interfering and taking Angle out. And Rey Mysterio kicks off the next SmackDown. And he's all smiles, even though Mark Henry ruined the championship match.
Of course.
And he says, when Kurt Angle had me in the ankle lock, and I knew I was going to tap out. He says this. I knew I was going to tap out, and I knew it was all going to be over. And then JBL's music hits and interrupts. But when you're a champion and being like, yeah, I don't deserve this.
I mean, like,
I don't deserve this.
what does that say? You know, like what do you even to the guys in the locker room? You know, like the other guys in your position. What are you telling them by saying the things you're saying in the way that you're saying them? And like, listen, like I know you may not have been booked the best way, and you know that's unfortunately outside politics and this and that comes with the game. But I mean, listen, he deserved it.
So many people wanted Rey to succeed.
Yeah.
He was in a position where this is where his character's direction was going to go.
And they just did not know. Because he was never... It was almost like they say, he was not meant to be there that soon. I think his time was almost sped up a lot because of situational circumstances.
Not only that, you needed a new star, because look at how many stars were... Like Batista was out.
Yeah.
You know? It's like you need that main star. There was an interview I read with Alex Greenfield, who was also a writer on the SmackDown roster. And he said his biggest regret on SmackDown was the Rey Mysterio handling of his World Championship run.
Of course.
He said Vince McMahon had a specific day in mind where it would start and when it would end.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that.
So it was pretty much Rey Mysterio was a carryover until Batista came back.
He was doomed to fail.
He was that fill-in.
Yeah, he was just there.
Because SmackDown was going through a giant transition at that time.
Yeah.
Not only with the stars who were injured because...
Or left.
Yeah. And with the creation of ECW, too, which added another wrinkle into that. So Rey Mysterio's title reign kind of gets lost in the shuffle because you have all these moving parts going on.
They invested more in what was going on around Mysterio and the title than the actual wrestler and the title.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, the ECW, I think, had a lot of attention that was turned that way.
Mm-hmm.
That helped take it away. And not for nothing, you know, one of the first ECW guys, who was that? Kurt Angle, who was literally just in that WrestleMania match with Orton and Mysterio, which, you know, underperformed. So, and you saw the attention that he got in ECW and when he was on SmackDown or visiting SmackDown, whatever, like you still saw him angle like every week, sometimes twice a week, and he was kicking ass. And Mysterio was over here getting like, you know, destroyed, getting his skull crushed in by the Great Khali, or you know, like, make that make sense, because I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. Like
his first like successful defense is at JBL, and the build up to that match was JBL saying, "All right, Rey has this machismo. Let's see how far we could push it." So put him in with Mark Henry, which was actually a fun like 5-minute match when I watched it back, but he lost.
Of course.
Khali, who just debuted like the week or two before, crushes Rey Mysterio,
destroys him,
and then you have Kane, who destroys Rey and JBL, and then Rey finally beats JBL at Judgment Day, and then the week on SmackDown they have a rematch. JBL pins him in the match, and then Rey's foot's on the rope, so they restart it, and then Rey beats JBL.
Yep, then he wins, yeah.
And then JBL retires or quits SmackDown.
Yeah.
So that's another name in the SmackDown brand that's off.
I left, yeah. Like
So just seeing like the disarray that SmackDown is in this time, none of it is Rey's fault at all. He is just in a no-win position. It's like being the captain of the Yankees or the Mets and not having any outfielders or infielders, and you just have the pitcher.
I said it before, he's a great wrestler, he's a great performer, he really has like everything you need, you know. Sure, you want to say he could be a little taller, sure, but other than that, I mean, really, he really had the makes of what you want as a champion. He was just the wrong guy, the wrong time, in the wrong time period, actually. Especially now, because, like, think about even to a few years ago where they opened up 205 Live and everything like that, like, and especially when it was in the beginning, when it was actually, like, taken seriously, at least, like, or even fast forwards, you know, when they had, was it Neville?
Yeah.
He really, you know, turned it up as well.
He's crushing his pack in AEW.
Absolutely. Yeah, from what I saw and what I see. But you can't tell me that from, you know, the making of 205 till now, where I mentioned other smaller guys, and even guys like Austin Theory, who have won the Money in the Bank. Obviously, he didn't win the title, but the fact that he was given a chance, like you had guys like Scott Steiner, who were Kevin Nash, who these guys would always get the Big Show, all these guys get the same opportunities.
There was like a caste system and like an unspoken caste system in wrestling. If you weren't X amount of height and X amount of weight,
or know someone in very higher up or whatever like that,
then you wouldn't be considered for the World Heavyweight Championship.
Very
rarely. And during Rey Mysterio's reign, they actually renamed the World Heavyweight Championship to just World Champion because Rey Mysterio is not a heavyweight.
Did they actually? Yeah.
They did do that. Yeah.
I did not notice that. Wow.
Yeah. So if it first starts at.
So they never called him a World Heavyweight Champion
after he beats JBL. They just call him World Champion.
Interesting. I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, so he's not the World Heavyweight Champion.
That's some shade. I mean, I get it, but that's kind of some shade.
Rey Mysterio's reign ends at the hands of King Booker.
Good times. Good times.
And he was betrayed by his friend Chavo Guerrero, just to make it a kind of a little bit more uncomfortable.
Because why not, right? Because why not? Because why would they not do that?
Yeah. Why would they not do that? It just added it just added another layer of uncomfortability. The whole rivalry.
It's like, let's just end it.
Just made me so uncomfortable.
When Rey lost the world title, how with Chavo. Oh my god, I remember that. Yeah, the whole sequence with Chavo and when Vicky got involved, it was just it got back into that weird area of just okay, we're kind of doing this again. I thought we were kind of past this. I thought, if you're think about it like this, you are on a hell of a run, right? If you're Rey Mysterio, you just lost your best friend, this and that. You win the Rumble. You may have lost No Way Out, but listen, you get another opportunity, right? You take advantage of that opportunity. You have this big celebration, this and that, and you may not have the best few weeks post winning the world title, but you still winning, right? You still winning for the first few months. Maybe it was not easy, but then you lose, okay? You lose against King Booker. Okay, you lost. But then next thing you know, you're just wrestling with Chavo Guerrero. Does that make sense to you?
And that's not putting slight on Chavo.
No,
he's
a great wrestler.
It's just the awkward direction it took because Chavo, quote unquote, retired during it because he felt he was a failure to his family, and then he was just supporting Rey.
Right.
And then he was helping Rey win. And then it would have been different if the feud was based on Rey wouldn't be world champion if it wasn't for me. But it's they kept bringing up Eddie.
That was the thing. Again, they circled back around, yeah.
And it just seemed like they were hammering it over the head that these two are fighting over Eddie. They're fighting over their friend, their uncle's spirit. And it was just an awkward, that's something you would see in an anime. You wouldn't see that in real life, I don't think. And just going back to when you said things are based off reality, these two are really good friends in real life.
Of course.
Even us, we didn't know anything as kids at the time. We knew that they were pretty tight regardless. Yeah. And then them to just start fighting out of nowhere over their
past,
uncles, their friends. Eddie's name.
Speario, whatever, his name.
And then getting his wife involved. It just added more and more layers to just being I think the best word to describe the whole Rey Mysterio run in 2006 would just be uncomfortable.
I'll use another U word. Underwhelming is my word. To me, it seemed like by doing that, by them kind of circling back to talking about Eddie and this and that, it was Vince's way of trying to make us forget very quickly that what just happened with Rey. Very quickly, he was just the world champion for 4 or 5 months, whatever it was. Very quickly that he just won the Royal Rumble and had his WrestleMania moment. As soon as he was wrestling with Chavo and, had that, go back and forth with him, you would not, you almost felt completely forgot that he was a world champion a month ago. You would not have noticed just by the way he was treated or the way he was talked about or just the company is doing everything to just make you pretty much diminish the things you worked for and just pretty much put you down in that same category. And by throwing Chavo in there, like you said, he was, semi-retired, whatever you want to call it. And even months before, he was just Kerwin White. So, that's the guy, that's the first guy you're going to throw in front of a guy who just lost the title. That's crazy.
And to have, that as the first, post title feud.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Chavo, great performer in his own right. It just
Underwhelming guy. Also,
yeah.
He deserved at least a IC title run.
We thought that was the direction for a while. I remember we were.
He was put on great matches too.
Yeah, I remember with Chavo, we went to our first live event, and Chavo was advertised, and we were so excited that Chavo was going, and then he didn't show up.
We were pissed. What was that?
06, yeah. This was like right after Eddie passed.
Yeah, this is before. This is when
this was in February.
Taz announced ECW was coming.
Yeah.
I remember. Yes, this was at a house show.
At Nassau Coliseum. And Matt Stryker was there, and then Paul Heyman came out.
Yeah. I see.
This was a random house show.
This was on Long Island, a random house show, but they put this house show on WWE.com because that's what they. Yeah. It was actually a random house show that turned out to be like a complete lucky, kind of historic house show if you really think about it.
And it was supposed to be Chavo versus Snitsky, but who replaced Chavo was Goldust.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
And then because we were waiting for it, I'm like, I have it. I'm like, all right, let's get ready for the Chavo. and then we just hear the Shattered Dreams music, which was very apropos of how it was.
Not for nothing, his theme kicked ass too. Yeah. So like, come on.
And
I mean, I feel like if you're talking about the promo wise, I mean, we touched on it earlier today, but the first promo I think kind of set the tone for how that story was gonna go between Orton and Mysterio. Orton was put in a interesting position, but to his credit, even though I despise him, he took the ball and ran with it, and he did his job. He did his job. The only thing, it's crazy because even when you look at the video and when Orton says, what about Eddie, and Rey starts to beat him up, I don't know. I feel like the way Rey was attacking Orton was so symbolic because it just didn't convince me. Like if I heard that in person, I like the way you froze, like the way Rey froze for a second and then started attacking him. The way he was attacking him didn't seem like it was a convincing way, kind of just like throwing his hands up, just like bop, bop, bop. Whereas, you almost want to kind of like lose that edge in your mind a little bit, like almost I had that Orton knows what I'm talking about. He had that little thing in your mind where you just, you just lose it. And I feel like that comment would have been huge if Rey reacted in a more dramatic way, to really like signify like, hey, like I'm really this type of wrestler, like, to really build him up a little better, like more of just like a happy luchador type of guy, like, hey, like I can screw things up too, I can beat you up, this and that, whatever. So I think that would have been a little bit better on that. But that promo was really, I think, a key thing to really getting and setting the tone of the whole rivalry. And then obviously I feel like if you have to look at a match, I mean, I'm not gonna say world title match, to be honest, because that's just, the match was just underperforming as it was, and it didn't tell me a lot. It was more for the match only happened for the celebration, is what it was for, what it came down to. But I feel like you have to look at the match at No Way Out with Orton and Rey, because of the way Orton won with the ropes, cheating, this and that, because that really was the turning point as far as, setting everything up, and then you bring Angle into the picture because he retained that night as well. The only thing that could have been better was, maybe have Rey earn it, or maybe wrestle Orton in like no DQ, or like a count, or like a steel cage, some sort of stipulation match where like I would not have put it in a one-on-one match because they had just had one, the night or that week before on pay-per-view. So maybe like, again, maybe no DQ, maybe a lumberjack match, maybe steel cage or whatever, something like that, or last man standing, I don't know, that would like really up the scale, up the wage a little bit, so that if Ray won, he can properly make sense for him to get back into the world title picture and then continue with what you want to do.
Right, because once it gets too personal and you guys just have like a regular
One-on-one
match,
clean-ish,
yeah, like
well,
it goes
clean,
back
but
to another feud Orton was in with Triple H, and it was if Triple H gets DQ'd, Orton wins the title.
Yeah,
but we were very underwhelmed with that match because I remember us watching live, and if there's no finality to that personal rivalry,
it just doesn't.
It just kind of like it feels flat. Yeah.
That's what happened, I feel like.
But yeah, that's the best way we can describe this, is that we were very excited for Ray to get this opportunity, but unfortunately, it just kind of fell flat.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you always say in a different type of realm, in a different type of universe, that an alternate universe, that you never know. Like if Eddie passes or doesn't pass, with how Ray was getting treated, maybe you never know. Christian left, other stars were leaving too. Angle left, he went to TNA as well. Who knows? Who else? Not to say Ray couldn't have gone to TNA, finally win the NWA title like Christian did, establish himself as a actual United States main eventer. And then, when I'm not going to compare when Christian came back to WWE because they kind of did him dirty by throwing him in ECW part the, but sometimes you have to leave the company to reestablish yourself to come back.
And I'm just grateful wrestling's at a place right now where people can be afforded
that's like the norm, I feel like.
Yeah, because now WWE isn't the be all end all. You can go to AEW, you could go to Impact, you could go to Japan, you could go to CMLL, you could go to all these different promotions and still thrive and still get your name out there. And with the age of social media, it's now more exposure. And back then in 2006, it wasn't as a for sure thing.
No, it was harder. It was definitely harder. It wasn't.
And we got to give credit to Christian, to Angle, to
Booker, even too.
But like to all those guys who left WWE
and risky
and reestablished themselves as what they weren't previously portrayed in.
Right.
So I give a lot of credit to all those individuals.
That's just speaks volumes on just how they are as a wrestler, performer, entertainer, whatever you want to call them. Yeah.
Well, this is the end of the road for the Rey Mysterio episode. This has been Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars and David. Do you want them to follow you on any social medias, anything like that, or you want to stay private?
Absolutely. Do not follow me. Yes, I will be very private. You cannot find me.
That is good. I'll be sure not to tag you in the episode. All right. See you next time, guys.